Hello again. It may surprise some viewers to hear that cruelty and abuse motivated by hatred of witches is on the rise in 21st century Britain. You will seldom see mention of this in the newspapers for the embarrassing reason that it is only carried out by people of colour. The great majority of such cases are among Africans, with a small number also from the Caribbean. It is not entirely unknown either among Muslims, those that is from less economically developed nations. The Metropolitan Police, responsible for policing the capital, are so worried about this development that they have recently published guidance on how to spot the signs of children and adults with learning difficulties being abused due to accusations of witchcraft or demonic possession. The only problem is that the police dare not say that this is a practice carried out only by people who are not white, which makes the guidance ridiculously vague and woolly. As usual, I give a link to the relevant document in the description to this video. For example, they say child abuse linked to faith or belief is not confined to one faith, nationality or ethnic community. Examples have been recorded worldwide across various religions, including Christians, Muslims and Hindus. This is true as far as it goes, but it has nothing at all to do with the situation in London. It's perfectly true that across the world in the past, Christians have been involved in this sort of thing. And it is also true that at times in India, Hindus have got mixed up in it. But that's not at all what's happening right now in London. In London, the situation is almost exclusively concerned with Africans who follow traditional belief systems. Most viewers will have heard of voodoo, the magical religious belief system in Haiti. This form of witchcraft obviously has its origins in West Africa, particularly Dahomey. Other parts of the Caribbean have got their own systems of this folk religion. In Jamaica, there is Obeah. Some of you might have heard of Obeah. There are people in Jamaica that dress up like African witch doctors and call themselves Obeah men. The island of Grenada has its own special form of this called Shango. Shango was the thunder god in West African tradition. Brazil again has its own particular version of this. Most of the slaves in the Caribbean and Brazil came from West Africa, and they carried with them the remnants of the beliefs that are still current actually in countries like Nigeria. In the Caribbean, such beliefs are often taken with a pinch of salt. In other words, people might give lip service to them the way that we touch wood or don't want to open umbrellas indoors, but the business isn't generally taken too seriously in Jamaica. Sometimes people might consult an Obeah man or something of that sort, the way that we might go to a fortune teller. In Africa, though, ideas like this are a matter of life and death, often. Sacrificing a child to the old gods in exchange for good fortune is really a thing there, as is the notion that an evil spirit can possess a child or sometimes an adult who has learning difficulties or epilepsy. Some such people are also thought to be witches who are setting the evil eye on their family and neighbours. The remedy for both demonic possession and suspected witchcraft is similar and entails physical abuse of the worst kind. The police in London know this very well because they helpfully list some of the steps taken by those who suspect that they have become bewitched. In the document, which I give a link, it lists Ritualistic beating, burning, cutting, stabbing, semi-strangulating, tying up the child, or rubbing chili peppers or other substances on the child's genitals or eyes. Yes, that all happens right now in London. Some children in London have been murdered for these reasons. These children were all black Africans. What I find quite extraordinary is that nowhere in this document do the police explain that this is only a problem found in people who are not white. This is really important. If you want to target witchcraft abuse and witchcraft slayings, you have to know who's carrying them out. It's not Scottish, Welsh or English people at all. It's usually recent immigrants from West Africa, those who are still bound up in the belief systems of that continent, rather than those who have lived for a while in Europe or America and absorbed the values of the Enlightenment. The police list have a section which is headed and tells people what to look out for and lists some warning signs that might be seen. But the most obvious one of all, that if these signs are seen in a child whose family have recently arrived from Africa, is not mentioned. By waffling on about Hinduism and so on, they create a smokescreen which obscures the real nature of the problem. This could be disastrous if a teacher were to read this checklist and not understand the hidden message or be able to decode the hints. In the checklist, the police give clues such as, it may be evident that the child's parent or carer does not have a close bond with the child. A child's attendance at school or college becomes irregular, or there is a deterioration in the child's performance. None of this will indicate abuse due to witchcraft in a white English child, but in a child whose parents are recent arrivals from Nigeria or Cameroon, it might well be a red flag. Because of this misplaced sensitivity, the police guide to spotting this kind of thing does not really work. The desire to avoid causing offence, or to be appearing to point the finger at any particular community, is laudable enough, I suppose, but the truth is that you will not find any child abuse linked to faith or belief in the average Methodist church, but rather in those who practice voodoo or obeah, where it is possibly likely to crop up. Few English Catholics will be torturing children to prevent them from casting enchantments, but it is known among some Muslims from primitive backgrounds. By not saying any of this, the Metropolitan Police are failing children and making it easier for such wickedness to flourish. A final point, which might occur to some viewers, of course, is that some people were mighty glad to see the end of witchcraft when the Industrial Revolution arrived in this country 250 years ago. They are sorry to see witchcraft now emerging again as something which is becoming so common that the police find it necessary to compile guides to how to spot witches and so on.